Abandoned, magically decayed mansion of an inventor. Abandoned places, Wales. Today we explore the magically decaying ruins of a house, once linked to the storied past of one of Wales' most famous kings. Its story begins as the legendary deer park of King Llewellyn the Great, who lived from 1172 to 1240. The site's name is derived from Bryn Cyrw, which means Hill of the Deer. Later bardic poetry speaks of the owning Brinker family first building a house there possibly in the 1400s, but maybe as late as 1644 on a sloping hillside. The family itself was founded by another king, Owain Gwynedd, and the house sat upon a massive estate. This first building was referred to as the Upper House, which started as a simple hall with an ornate window. This was then expanded by the late 1500s to 2 stories, with a parlor to the left and a dining room on the right. A later stairway in the rear was then added with expanded fireplaces, possibly under the direction of Ellis Brinker before 1662. The next works included a division of the house into 2 living spaces and the blocking off of the stairs, followed by a final period when many windows were bricked off due to the window taxes introduced in 1696 by King William III. While this tax was removed in 1851, many houses we explore still show the signs of its effect on architecture. When the Brinker family died off in the late 1700s, the house was sold in 1809 and its use changed to a farmhouse. The discovery of a large amount of champagne bottles during the excavation of the earlier Upper House have shown its use as a wine storage during the mid-1800s. In between 1811 and 1814, new works were carried out on the ornamental terraces, establishing a second, much larger Regency Villa house constructed by John Norton for the new owner Captain Joseph Huddart from Cumberland. These terraces, inspired by Italian examples, and the Regency house itself was connected to park and farmlands, with 2 long meandering walks through its pleasure grounds, a lake, and a walled garden. Between the 2 houses, their lands covered 12,000 acres. Today it is quite a different place. Through a thick undergrowth of plants and twisted trees lie the modern ruins of this once great house. The doorway and windows stand as if part of some ancient Greek or Roman ruin, sprouting from the ground like the surrounding trees. Because of these distinct features and the wild peacefulness of this place, it has quickly become one of my favorite ruinous mansions out of the now over 100 sites that we've visited. Now that we've explored some of the exterior house, you may wonder how it got to its ruined state. Every home has a tale, and the house's growth and its downfall spanned centuries. The modern house's builder Joseph Huddart had a career that included captaincies, chart making, and inventions, including steam machines for making rope, which he made his fortune from. He was highly regarded in his day and was included on an engraving of Distinguished Men of Science of 1807 to 1808 alongside Thomas Telford, James Watt, and M.I. Brunel. From humble shoemaker origins, he had gained an interest in mathematics and mechanics, building models of mills and ships. He later worked in his father's fishing business, smoking herring in the Solway Firth. He inherited this business in 1762 and married his wife Elizabeth, taking captaincy on a brig selling smoked fish to Ireland. Joseph then built a handmade ship to study surveying and navigating, and met Sir Richard Hotham of the East India Company. In 1778, he began 4 voyages to the east, eventually becoming captain of the East India Company's Royal Admiral, and surveying Sumatra, India, and then the Hebrides in 1791, leading to authoring a book in 1801. He also became a Fellow of the Royal Society and managed Trinity House, while also supervising the construction of Hurst Point Lighthouse. During this time, he studied ways to improve rope strength and used steam power to produce rope, setting up Huddart and Company, which funded the new mansion we explore today. With the new house built, Joseph was, however, to only live 2 more years, dying in London in 1816 at the age of 75. The construction of the house meant as a new family seat was then handed to his son Joseph, the only surviving of 5, who had all died by their 20s. Joseph then lived in the villa, inheriting nearby lands along with Castle Dudrythe and holding office as High Sheriff of Carnarvonshire. In 1821, he was to construct a unique hilltop Gothic folly tower used for banqueting that marked the coronation of George IV in Wales. Labor of Napoleonic War veterans supplied the workforce for its creation. For his construction of the tower, he was later knighted in 1826 by the king on a state visit to the newly constructed Menai Bridge. In his later life, he was known as taking out a large loan to save the Festiniog Railway and was involved in industrial pursuits at quarries and mining sites. Sir Joseph was to die in 1841, being survived by his wife Elizabeth and 9 children. The estate and lands in some 6 towns then passed to George Augustus Herbert, only 19 years of age. During his time at the mansion, he was director of the Rosyth Slate Quarry and also the Festiniog Railway from 1847 to 76. At the estate, he made improvements including expanding the height of the Folly Tower. Like his grandfather, he saw himself as a man of science and patented a fish plate along with many failed perpetual motion machines. His wife Eleanor was a novelist who was to have 10 children with him. Their marriage was a stormy one though, with Sir Claw Williams Ellis as a child, reporting seeing half-eaten food laid out on a table with the house deserted. It has been thought this was related to the separation of Joseph and Eleanor following an argument over his possible secret family, whereafter she moved to Sussex and their other house in Bath, while Joseph, going to London, left the house empty. To add to the family's woes, George's mother was to die in 1851, being thrown from her carriage when it crashed. Upon the death of George, the villa passed to George Augustus Ward Huddart. At the time of the inheritance, he was a reverend in Hereford and Yorkshire and came to Brinker with his wife Caroline and 2 children. There he held directorship and chairmanship of the Festiniog Railway. He refurbished the house, adding a new porch and billiards room, almost bankrupting him. This was then followed by the sale of a third of the estate lands in 1891, and then the sale of the house itself between 1899 and 1903 to the Greaves family. George died in 1908. The new owner, Richard Greaves, was a landowner and managed a slate mine. He was married to his wife Ellen and had traveled the world in 1873. In 1886, he had purchased a previous estate, and like Joseph, the house's builder, he was interested in mechanical devices, making related improvements on both his estates, and also serving, like the Huddarts, as chairman of the Festiniog Railway from 1908 to 1920. As well as the Carnarvonshire and Merionethshire Steamship Company, and in 1896 as Sheriff of Carnarvonshire. The house was mainly used by the new family as a hunting lodge until the First World War, when its conversion to a prisoner camp for 50 German officers in 1918 may have caused damage to the house. Wild stories of the period include the officers drinking the entire wine cellar and being made to replace its losses with their own German wine. By 1930, whatever the case of its state, the lands were broken up and sold, with the hall lying empty and Richard dying childless in 1942. He was succeeded by his nephew, the younger brother of Sir Bertram Claw Williams Ellis, of the show The Prisoner's Portmeirion, the very same who had seen the abandoned breakfast and house after George and Eleanor's argument. Finally, in 1945, both houses were stripped of furnishings and decoration by farmers for building materials. A government survey of the house in 1954 showed a surviving Regency period villa with multiple phases of building, including a later right-angle wing and circular cellar. As the old house crumbled slowly away, so did the Folly Tower, until its miraculous renovation and reuse in the 1990s as a rental lodging. In 2012 and 2014, archaeological digs at the house exposed dinner service sets and wine bottles with the family crest. The lower house, a fine Italian-inspired villa, now lies overgrown, twisted among trees and undergrowth, slowly forming a fantasy ruin worthy of the greatest follies of its time. It is this house we explore today. A distinctive curved wall is present here. Walking through a window, we enter what was once the billiards room with its curving rear wall. From here, a doorway leads to a hall that connected to the kitchens. Some of the ornate front is visible from standing on the dining room walls. We pass the old entrance that led to the drawing room and move around the far side. Here, a curving bay of windows gives way to the drawing room and its multiple fireplaces. The turret once led to the main connecting hallway and the house's many rooms. Past the turret lies a tall wing of rooms with 5 bays of windows. Past it is what was once the service area for servants and a game larder. For a view of these rooms and the old wine cellars that were drunk dry by the prisoners, we are going to loop back behind the billiards room wall. A wall that sits below a ramp follows the edge of the house's rear. A metal grate may have had something to do with the German prisoners, or perhaps to protect the wine stores from them. Above it is a deadly broken and sagging stone door lintel. Lastly, let's take a look at what is left of the servants' area. Having explored the house fully, we leave it to slowly crumble, largely forgotten in these woods, until one sad day it will be no more. Join us next time as we explore another abandoned mansion and its story of a headless rebel. Thank you for watching. For more unique abandoned places and their lost stories, follow us today by subscribing and hitting the bell icon. Until next time.